watching Leicester Till I Die TV.
Watch us on YouTube.
Listen on your favourite podcast platform.
Or ask your smart speaker
To play the podcast Leicester Till I Die.
Right, Chris.
All right. Oh, I've done it every time, don't I? Good evening. How the devil are you? Good night, good morning, good afternoon, good day, goodbye. Hello, welcome along. This is LTID TV from Leicester Till I Die, live on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. And if you want to listen to us on podcast rather than look at my gorgeous face, and the gentleman next to me who has got the gorgeous face, Beauty and the Beast, what can I say? We'll be getting Beauty in a second. But if you want to listen to us rather than watch us, and I can't blame you, on all the major podcast platforms, Spotify, Apple, Google, Podcast Addict, and of course we are part of the TalkSport fan podcast as well. I'm still getting used to not playing the Premier League intro anymore, of not having the Premier League background on here. I still have the Premier League trophy. It cost me £300. I'm not getting rid of that. Hopefully in a year's time I might be able to buy a championship one. Who knows? But I'm going to be joined, the man who knows. And there's very few journalists you can actually say know what they're talking about. Everybody says that whenever they look at me. But this is one gentleman, he knows what he's talking about. Some would say old. I would just say knowledgeable. Rob, good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
I'm not three bad. I'm getting used to no longer being a Premier League team. But look, it's a game of football at the end of the day, isn't it?
Yeah, I suppose you have to put it in context, really. But relegation does impact on so many people. 9 seasons in the Premier League, and what a ride it's been. I mean, obviously we did on the Athletic the investigation into what went wrong, and offered our opinions on various decisions that were made and the issues that cropped up. But we also had to do one. To look back over, the time in the Premier League and what a crazy time it has been, and so eventful. It's better to burn out than fade away, isn't it? And I think
it is.
That's exactly what Leicester have done in the Premier League at the moment. But I'm confident they'll come back.
I mean, let's be honest with you. If you're a Spurs fan, you look at Leicester over the last 9 seasons, and you'd give anything to have probably a tenth of what we achieved.
If the rise was as dramatic as it was, winning the title in the second season back in the Premier League, the decline has been equally so.
Yeah.
We could see there were signs of problems last season, but they still finished 8th and got to a European final. Nobody would have really thought, except for Brendan Rodgers, as it turns out, nobody had really thought that they would end up struggling to get 40 points on the board this season. But it was a self-fulfilling prophecy in the end, wasn't it?
It was. And I suppose, look, I have my own thoughts about Brendan, but those days are gone now. We have to move on.
Yeah.
Managers like players, and I'm sure we're going to lose a lot. Just as we've raided other clubs when they've gone down, Harry Maguire and the likes. We move on, and we've got to now start looking forward to the future.
Well, I think, Chris, the club feel that way as well. Speaking to a few people today, they feel that now that they've had a couple of weeks to lick the wounds and sort of assess what happened and the issues and address them. But now they just want to move on. And I know we're going to talk a lot about the next manager, and that's
Yeah.
why this appointment is so important, because they need to draw a line under what's happened, learn from it, of course,
Yes.
but then move on and plan. And there needs to be some positivity around the club. You can't have a hangover in the Championship, because it can be a pretty brutal league. I know there's not a lot of quality in there, but there's a lot of fight and there's a lot of challenges ahead.
There's some big names in there, though, isn't there? A lot of teams that have been up in the Premier League.
Yeah, and a lot of them have struggled to come back. That's the thing. I know there's clubs that have bounced between the two divisions. I mean, Sheffield United are back, obviously. Burnley came straight back up, and that's ideally what Leicester would want to do. But there's a lot of clubs in there. There's a lot of examples in there of if you make the wrong decisions when you go down, and then those parachute payments start to run out, and that gap grows. It can be very, very tough. I mean, there's obviously in the Midlands, there's Stoke and Birmingham City, but there's also Hull. There's loads of them, that West Bromwich Albion. There's loads of them that have been there, and they've all at some point been pushing in the top 10 in the Premier League, chase the dream. And I think the one thing about Leicester, and I did write this in my intro for one of my articles, was that normally when a club gets relegated, there's a lot of bitterness from the fans because they blame a lack of ambition from the ownership. I think the opposite's true here. I think they've just overreached. They've flown too close to the sun, and things have transpired against them in terms of COVID.
That I think was the big thing, wasn't it? And
they've made mistakes as well, though, haven't they, Chris?
They did. They did. And I think that they would hold their hands up. Just to go through a few hellos, Blue Fox, he's talking there about Scott Parker that will come on to. Heather, you were second, I'm afraid, but you're my daughter, so I'll let you be first, because I'm after my Father's Day present, which is the new retro Leicester shirt. Richard Cox is in, West Ham fan. Congratulations on the Europa Conference League. What about your fans, though? Throwing stuff. Embarrassing. But look, every club's got them. All I will say, Richard, is enjoy it, because West Ham are literally copying everything Leicester do. We have a good season. You were a season behind us. Last season, or the season before last, we got to a European semi-final. We looked reasonably, eighth in the Premier League, and it'll happen next season. So we'll see you next season in the Championship, Richard, if we're still there. But no, mate, well done on winning the trophy. Spencer's in, and as his Facebook user. Got to say, first of all, if nobody is subscribed to Athletic, please do. I did say it at the start that there's very few journalists that you read and you think that they know what they're talking about. You said Rob, certainly one of those. And I believe you're still doing the £1 a month for the first 6 months. So get over there, check it out. We
have lots of offers. Yeah, we have lots of special offers coming up because we want to get subscribers in. And since we've been taken over by the New York Times as well, there's been a lot more of that sort of strategy as well to get subscribers in as well and try and make it as affordable as possible for fans. Yeah,
but it is really, really good read. I'm subscribed, so do follow my example. Right, let's have a look at, the reason we're here, have a look at some of the managers. And you're quite right to say that we did live the dream, and we could have very easily gone the way that Leeds went when they tried to live the dream. And I think we came close to them, perhaps I thought we would do to that, but we're going to lose players. We're not in a fire sale that Leeds were when they went down. But look, we've gone down. We've still got a club. Derby went down. They nearly went out of business. Coventry didn't have a ground for ages. We've still got all that. So it's not completely black, is it?
No, I honestly, they're not in that bad a position. I mean, I know there was a lot of speculation in some other parts of the media about redundancies around the club. It's not my understanding. All the cuts are going to have to be made on the football side. So there will be a lot of players. There'll be a lot of trading, a lot of players leaving this summer. But I think the rest of the club and the investment in Seagrave and the stadium project and around that will still go ahead. The club's still planning long term. They're not shrinking. this is a setback. It's a big setback for them,
Yes.
and one they never foresaw. But I still think they've got a strategy to get back up and to build the club and to build the club's revenue, which is the most important thing, because then when your revenue grows, you can invest more in the team, you can invest more in wages, you can invest more in those contracts that they've been paying out for a while now under Brendan. I mean, that's the one thing I did note about it under Brendan. The level of contracts these players were being offered, it was taking them to obviously the 7th highest wage bill in the Premier League. But because of COVID and everything that happened, the revenue couldn't grow to the same extent. That's why we got to the situation where suddenly financial fair play becomes an issue. It wasn't an issue a few years ago before COVID. They weren't even considering financial fair play. And then suddenly you get to that point and they're going, hang on a second. If our goal is to qualify for Europe every year, and they put it in their annual statements every year, they want to aspire to be in European football every year. And then UEFA turn around and say, well, we've got some new FFP plans now, profit and sustainability rules that mean it's 70% of your revenue that you're allowed to spend. And that's why Leicester were on the watch list, were put on the watch list for UEFA. So that's why they pumped the brakes. That's why they pumped the brakes on the investment. But they still should have had enough quality, talent, characters in that squad to be nowhere near the position they found themselves in.
As I always say, you're never too good to go down, but you can be too bad to stay up. But let's have a look at who's been linked. And, a lot of my personal thoughts will probably come out during this. But the first one is, thank God. I mean, we had a near miss sort of when we took Dean Smith on with a certain American gentleman. But this one, Steven Gerrard, I've called him there Slippy G, bless him.
No.
I think it's been confirmed today. He has actually finally gone to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, I don't think that was really one that was seriously considered. I mean, this is the thing about what I just said about Leicester and being still in a decent position in terms of the way the club's run and the aspirations of the club. So there'll be a lot of managers that will fancy that job still, even though it's a massive job to rebuild this squad. And I'm sure he would have been one of them to try and rebuild his managerial reputation, not a reputation as a player, because he was one of the finest we've ever produced, but his managerial reputation after his experience at Aston Villa. That he would have been a number of those that would have been pushed. I mean, this is what happens when you've got a vacancy at a club like Leicester City. You get suddenly a lot of agents that see an opportunity, and John Rudkin's phone will be red hot. They will be ringing him all the time, pushing candidates, suggesting he's perfect for you, the way they play, they set up their team. He'll get the most out of the players that are already at the club. They'll tell him. It's like a sales pitch. And so I'm sure Steven Gerrard would have had his representatives contacting John Rudkin and going, look, he's perfect for you, the way he goes about it. Look what he did at Rangers. That would have happened. And that's quite often when you see these names appear in the media, it's because some of those representatives will let that out. They'll say, look, because it helps their cause. So they'll say, look, he's ready to go. He's up for this job. So, you run that story, Steven Gerrard for Leicester City. But, what John Rudkin's got to do is take a step back and just assess all of these guys dispassionately and pick the right one, because it's probably the most important appointment that I can remember in my time covering Leicester City in the 13 years now. Because it can go one or two ways, can't it?
And I think it's got to be, I mean, you could look at it several ways, like we'd take a short-term manager on just to get us back. But I think it's got to be somebody that's got we can look at for a long-term project.
Yes, because it's not just about just getting back to the Premier League, it's staying in the Premier League again. And all those sides that before Leicester had gone past and eased past, you've got to catch them up again now. They've started to go into the distance.
Yes, yeah.
I know somebody just mentioned about John Rudkin there, criticism of him, but he's still got to be the guy that does the job. and he did the job pretty well before.
I think, to be
Unfortunately,
honest with you, yeah, I mean, I've done several shows here, and I do one called Life's a Pitch, which is basically where I come on, I can just rant for half an hour and then go off. And look, we've had that. We've had all the, well, how much blame does Susan take? Does John take? And all of those. But look, I think we've come past that now. And now we're at the point where we have to come together now and try and, well, not try, but we've got to make sure we get together and keep together. In regards with Steven Gerrard, I mean, my memories, I've got to be honest with you, my thoughts on Steven Gerrard are probably dulled a bit by alcohol because I did spend New Year's Eve with a Rangers fan. And he wasn't very complimentary, shall we just say, about Steven Gerrard. So probably had my my memories a bit dulled by the bottle and a half of gin we managed to get through. But hey, it was New Year's Eve. What can I say? But
no, I think he needs to, if he's serious about his managerial career. I mean, obviously he's going to Saudi, so he's going to get a lot of money, but it's not going to enhance his reputation. If he'd taken a side in the Championship, not Leicester, but one that really needs rebuilding a project, and built them up and took them into the Premier League, then I think people could start talking about him as being a serious contender.
Yeah. Now, the one man that we're probably not going to get, but I think that we all, well, especially the Leicester board, would like, and I think a lot of fans would like, and I've had to kind of get quite overweight on humble pie here, because when he was at Brighton last season, the season before last, I said, everybody's going mad about him, next England manager. But I said, he's not all that, is he? And I think, whilst he may, look and think, well, I've got a Premier League job in me still, I think he had his fingers burned at Chelsea. And I understand him going to Chelsea. You don't turn those sort of jobs down because you don't know when it's going to, you're going to be offered another one. It's a bit like the England job, when it comes, you grab it. But I read a piece today and it said, he's just not sure about dropping a division. And I do understand that. But Leicester, to me, when I look at it, it's almost the perfect fit for him if only we hadn't gone down.
Yeah. I think if they'd stayed up, you might have seen him in the hot seat. You might have seen him as the next Leicester City manager. From what I hear, he is taking a bit of time out of the game. I think the Chelsea experience burnt him a little bit.
Yeah.
Perhaps he feels now to get to that level again, he's got to go away now and sort of reflect and study other coaches, other techniques, become a more rounded and complete coach, go and spend some time at some other clubs, which a lot of managers do when they're out of work. It's a profession, so you've got to study and you've got to work hard. Perhaps he's in that space right now. If Leicester had stayed in the Premier League, perhaps it might have been perfect timing for him to jump straight back in and learn on the job. But and it would have been a similar sort of situation to one he had at Brighton. But no, I think that I know Leicester have always wanted him.
Yeah,
he was the natural successor to Brendan. They've always had a succession plan for players and for managers. And when Brendan come in, Graham was the next one. That was how they were going. But it just the timing hasn't been right. So no. I don't think we'll see Graham Potter. I'd be surprised. Never say never, but I would be surprised if he changes his mind. They would still be having conversations with his representatives. Don't you worry about it. Probably on a daily basis.
Two words, Claudio Ranieri. You never know what's coming left field, do you?
Well, no, and that's a perfect example. I mean, this feels very similar to me. This process it feels similar to that when Nigel left. That was for non-footballing reasons, and they had other targets. They had number 1, number 2, number 3 targets. I mean, they were trying to get Gus Hiddink, Martin O'Neill, and various other top-level coaches to come in at the time. Claudio was the first one to throw his hat in the ring publicly. And then we had this 2 or 3 week sort of scenario, which culminated in that Preki night. I mean, we spoke about this earlier, didn't we?
Yeah.
Preki night with this obscure coach in America that suddenly the odds were slashed on him, and we were all tuning into his press conference online to see because he was coming to a special project in England. You will have these sudden spurts of rumor and speculation which affects the markets and stuff like that. But then they went back round to Claudio.
Yeah. That Chris Forian at 30-1, I thought was really a good bet. Don't know why he didn't get it. I mean, and
did you have any money on that?
I should have done, shouldn't I? Who knows? Hey, at 5,000-1, you never know with Leicester. Everybody's asking about different managers in the chat, guys. I'm going to stop sort of putting them up because we are going to go through as many managers as we can, as you see. But the thing for me with Graham Potter is, and I understand what you're saying because that's very much what Eddie Howe did. When he left Bournemouth, and obviously I live down just outside Bournemouth, so I kind of know. I've seen Eddie Howe come in and what he did at Bournemouth. And then he went away and he learned from some very good managers, and he went around different clubs. And maybe Graham feels he needs to do that. Yeah. For me, I look at this and think, well, maybe this is a chance for him to, because he'll be given longer than he was at Chelsea if he comes to Leicester. And that might be a chance for him to rebuild his career and get that back on track, because it has been damaged a little bit at Chelsea. And we all know that it was, he didn't get to pick which players were coming in. And it was like, a scene from Zulu when it was training because he had that many players.
It was just a strange situation for him to find himself in at Chelsea.
But it could restore, to come to Leicester, which, as you say, is still a fantastic setup, still a very, a job that a lot of people would want. He could just take that and rebuild his reputation with us.
Yes, and I'm sure that would be what the club would be telling him. But if he feels it's not right for him at the moment, then there's not a lot you can do about it. I mean, it might be one of those that's never destined to be. But I just know that they like him that much that they would really try and invest in him to do the job. Who knows? Who knows?
Will they have their limit, do you think, the club? Do you think they say, right, this is X amount of pounds, but that's it?
Oh, yes, they have to.
Yeah.
Because obviously now everything's changed with financial fair play, where you could record £105 million worth of losses over 3 years in the Premier League. It's a third of that in the Championship. So they have to cut costs massively. Brendan Rodgers was the highest paid. He didn't earn £10 million a year, by the way.
No.
I know I've seen that rumour so many times. He was the highest paid manager in the club's history. They invested a lot in him. Not only did they invest in his contract, in his backroom team, the money they gave Celtic to get him out of his contract, but the contracts they gave the players under him that he fought for. There was a lot of investment in Brendan. They spent more money under Brendan than they spent under any other manager before. They can't do that now. They've got to rein it all right back. That's why there's going to be a lot of departures this summer. There's going to be a lot of cutting to the wage bill. Players coming in on a lot less than they are now. A lot of the players have now taken pay cuts in their contracts, clauses in their contracts as well. So the manager's situation will still be, obviously the manager will still be very, very well paid.
Yeah.
But it will still be a situation where they can't just offer him silly money to come in. No. So it won't be a financial decision for Graham, because he's obviously got a massive payoff off Chelsea. Yeah, it'll be whether he fancies the job.
Yeah. Now Highfields has said here, we'll come on to this one. Actually, that's great timing. Highfield, Scott Parker 49 odds on to take the helm, and we're going to talk about Scott Parker. I got a very small man's part earlier in my group because I suggested that Scott Parker was a bit of a disaster. I've got a friend who's a Fulham fan who has not got a good word to say about him. And I've got, I live outside Bournemouth, so as you can imagine, a lot of my friends are Bournemouth fans who don't have a lot of good things to say about him either. And yet, the points that a few people have been made is, he has got teams out of that division. But if it's got to be a long-term investment, which we talked about before, we don't just want a manager that's going to get us out of that division, do a Brendan to some degree and throw players under the bus, and or take us straight back down again.
Yeah. Scott is one that's he's going to be considered. He is definitely going to be considered because of his record in terms of he's available. He's got Fulham and Bournemouth into the Premier League. Obviously, it's not worked out so well when he's got them up, but the priority for Leicester is to get back. That is, then they can build. Perhaps then, they can go for other targets if they make that decision. But they can't offer him too much money. Then it costs them a lot of money to pay him off. But I think he's still got a chance. He was somebody that they've spoken to. So, he's on the radar. He's on the list, certainly. And the fact that he's got promotions before will have resonated with the board. My one worry would be the way he spoke at the start of the season about the Bournemouth team felt very similar to Brendan, how he was talking about a lack of investment. We needed more help. We needed more players. I mean, Brendan saying this isn't the club that I joined originally, or those sort of moments. That's negativity, and Leicester don't need negativity now. They need positivity. They need somebody who's going to come in and go like Claudio did. Come on, let's go. It was that was the big thing about Claudio. Whatever people had. I mean, they all said this is going to be a disaster. It's never going to work. But he was so positive. He just lifted everybody. And then when there was momentum and they started to win games and they started the season well, and that positivity just cascaded. And it's just the way that the rot set in at Leicester this season, and they couldn't stop it. It's a very similar thing. So he needs to have learned from that. When he come out and he was talking that way, he was asking for the sack.
Yeah.
And there was times at the start of the season where I felt like Brendan was doing the same. So you can't go down that road again for Leicester. They need positive vibes coming into this club. Somebody that's just going to fire everybody up.
I've got to say, and I always say this in my defence when we talk about Claudio, I was one of the few. I actually was quite pleased to see Claudio come in. Probably say, but he's never won anything. He's only ever got teams to second and third. I went, well, we're Leicester. If he gets us to second or third, I'll be more than happy. And of course, he did better. And I know it's a bit of a cliche, but we're looking at, a lot of the managers here that are going to be names are going to be coming up are ones that have been sacked for whatever reason. And I know there's no other industry like this where you can be sacked from one job and then two weeks later you're in another job again. But should we not be looking at somebody who is actually in work now? He didn't last a full season even at Club Brugge. If somebody's still in a job, does that? I know it might cost us a little bit more because we're going to have to pay compensation, but at least that proves they're doing a good job.
Yeah, their stock is higher. Yes, you're right. I mean, I don't know what's on your slides, but John Dale Thomason at Blackburn Rovers.
He's coming up. Yeah. One of my favourites.
Yeah. Well, we'll talk a little bit more about him when he comes up. But obviously his stock is rising, and I was very impressed with his side when they knocked Leicester out the FA Cup, because it felt like I was watching a Leicester performance.
Yes,
it was high intensity pressing as a unit. And I thought, this is interesting. And I know that, again, there's been suggestions from agents and sources outside the game, within the game, but outside the club, that will be whispering in John Rudkin's ear about that. But it's whether they want to go down that road in terms of compensation negotiating, because they need to get somebody in sooner rather than later for all the work that needs to be done.
I mean, I'm going to say this. I'm going to say hi to Craig, who I was actually speaking to earlier, and was trying to get him onto a show earlier and possibly seeing what happens over the next few days. A Bournemouth fan. He runs Up the Cherries in All Departments, which is a Bournemouth fan channel. And he said there, don't bring in Scott Parker. He says the only job he's good at, not sure it was a dustbin man or a postman. It was one of the two, but he had nothing nice to say about him. And that's coming from, like I say, he brought Bournemouth up. But then again, he was the reason why I said that we were going straight back down again. So from the horse's mouth. Now, this next one, I tend to think he's missed the boat, because I think if he was going to keep the job, I think this could have been decided already, and that's Dean Smith. Yeah. I mean, I like the guy.
Yeah, he's a nice guy.
he calls a spade a spade.
Yeah.
And I mean, when you look, I think the success that Thomas Frank's having at Brentford is based on what he set up and what he put in. I could be wrong. That's just the way I see it. Villa, he got them promoted. He turned Jack Grealish into a £1 billion player. All right, he couldn't keep Norwich up, but when they sacked him, Norwich were in a better position than they ended up at the end of the season.
Yeah.
And he got, in 8 games, I think it was only 10% less points than Brendan Rodgers got in 28 games. So, and of course, he's got, there's the team, there's not just him, there's Craig Shakespeare and John Terry. Has the moment gone for him, do you think?
Well, he's in contention, but as we speak, I think they probably would prefer a fresh outlook of somebody to come in, completely change certain aspects about the club at the moment. But I think he's seriously in the conversation, or has been in the conversation, because I think I suspect that John's quite close. John Rudkin will probably be quite close to making his decision as we speak. But Dean has spoken to the club. He's had a sit down with them, and I mean, it was very awkward for him and for us in the press conferences because, we couldn't ask him questions. Well, we did ask him questions, but we couldn't ask him questions about what had gone on before and expect an answer because he wasn't there. Yeah. And we couldn't ask him questions about the future because he didn't know whether he was going to be there. Yeah. So it was very much in the moment. And it was very difficult for him to express opinions in that because he had 8 games. He just had 8 games. I mean, this is the big flaw about the season, and one of the biggest mistakes that the club made was probably not making the decision on Brendan earlier to give the man coming in more time to get a bounce, get a reaction, and get something going. But I still think though that they might have other preferred options ahead of Dean. But if they end up with Dean, he's a great sort of backup, I think. As you pointed out, he did get Villa up via the playoffs. That would complete the set, wouldn't it? For Leicester to get up via the playoffs again in the last few years.
I don't think my heart would do.
No, but they're going to put you through it, Chris. No, you know that.
Yeah, that's true.
It's not good. Being a Leicester fan, it is not going to be good for your health.
No,
but I think he's a serious option for them. With Shaky, he knows the club inside out, and he's a very respected coach, and I think undervalued coach as well. I think he's an excellent coach. The John Terry X factor that remains to be seen whether they would have John Terry as well. He's got his own aspirations, but given a bit of time, a chance to rebuild the team in a pragmatic way, perhaps they might be able to get the job done. So if he is the man that they end up appointing because others have turned it down, I wouldn't be too disheartened.
No, I mean, I think it's difficult to judge him on 8 games. It was like 10 minutes before it struck the iceberg, asking someone just to take over being the captain of the Titanic.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a complete. What's going to happen. I do wonder if Dean would have been as welcomed if he hadn't got Craig Shakespeare with him. But they came as a team, and so we accept them as a team. John Terry, he's got his own aspirations, but he's been knocked over by Seagrave and the facilities there. So he may decide it's a way to rebuild his.
He likes a round of golf, doesn't he? And there's 9 holes down at Seagrave, so there's plenty of opportunities for him. But I mean, I think again, and Dean probably find this throughout his whole career, to be honest. Leicester probably had other options that they probably preferred for the interim manager, and they sounded out a number of candidates who either didn't fancy the fact that it was the possibility of dropping in the Championship and didn't want to be a short-term appointment. They wanted to be long-term, and at the time, Leicester couldn't commit to a big contract, in case they went down. So Dean turned out to be the option that they chose because he was willing to come in and do it on a short-term basis and give it his all. He had nothing to lose. So I applaud him for that, and he was a pleasure to deal with actually as well.
I always say I don't think that I would never look at that and go, he's got our relegation on his CV. Well, he obviously has, but he couldn't really do much in the time. He did as well as I think he could have done. But look, we've already looked at one ex-Club Bruges manager and another one that's being linked. And here's where it gets interesting, because you've got to put up with my pronunciations now. Karl Hoefkens, is it pronounced?
Oh, yeah. Okay, this is a new one. This is one that's only just really been thrown into the mix in the last couple of days, possibly even the last day.
Yes.
So, yeah, I just think they need somebody with experience.
Yeah.
Somebody who's done the job, who come, because this is a big job. This isn't just somebody coming in and taking over a team that expects to be in the championship for a few years and has got time to completely rebuild, and they're going to be given 2-3 years to get everything going, and the fans are going to be happy with that. And this is a different scenario. Leicester expect to bounce back or go close to bouncing back at the first attempt. There's too much at stake.
Yes,
and that's why I think that they will go for somebody with more experience. Might not be English experience, but it might be experience certainly of building teams and squads and getting a reaction instantly. So he's not one that I've heard been mentioned to me, put it that way.
Blue Fox has said here, would you take him, Chris? I'm very much in agreement with you, Rob. I think it's very risky to take somebody that's never had any experience of English football into the Championship, where it's not like we've been in the Championship 5 or 6 seasons, and we're mid-table, and it's where we are. We need somebody that knows that division, that knows how it works, and I just don't think he's got that experience. But then look, whoever we get in, we're not going to please 100% of the fans.
No, you won't. No, you won't. Whoever comes in. No, and here's another one, Enzo.
Yeah.
We touched on him
before we started. Again, okay, is he the sort of man, as you mentioned? His one managerial job wasn't ending in trumpets and fanfares, did it? And is that the sort of football? Because obviously it's going to come Pep style, but is that the sort of football that we need to play to get out of the Championship?
That would come completely out left field if Enzo Maresca got the job. I know he's been widely tipped by other media outlets as being somebody they would consider. And again, he might have representatives who are pushing his name forwards. He's obviously ambitious. He's had a spell briefly as a manager himself at Parma. Didn't go that well. I think he averaged just over a point a game of 14 games. I think he had. Yeah. So it's not the greatest CV to put forward for a job like this, in my opinion. But yeah, he's probably a name that's been whispered in John Rudkin's ear and pushed, and the fact that he's been linked with Celtic and Leeds would suggest that they are quite active in pushing him as well. And I would be very surprised. I mean, Mikel Arteta did very well.
Yeah, he said Endo will have Pep on speed dial, and they do have some good under-23 players. I mean,
you still got to manage those players and get the best out of them. And I don't think a team full of under-23s are going to get you out of the Championship. When you look at the team that Leicester had. Yes. When they got up, they had Dean Hammond, Kevin Phillips, Martin Wasilewski. There was some serious experienced players in that Wes Morgan, the lads that went on and did what they achieved in the Premier League. Yeah. That wasn't a team full of kids. No. So, you can have 1 or 2, 3 or 4, but you can't have a full team in that level. I don't want to sound like Alan Hansen here. You can't win anything with kids, but
can you read? I was writing that down. Then
I know, but you've got to have a bit of experience, game management, and you've got to have a manager.
a lot of the experience are players that we're going to be losing. We have to accept that, and we've got to accept that we probably can't afford to keep them, and B, we know there's a lot of average players on very high wages, and we've got our own youngsters coming through as well, haven't we? So the
Yeah.
1-2 that we need, we can probably blood from our own youth.
Yeah,
Squad.
yeah. There is some talent in the club. Unfortunately, they're injured.
Well, yes.
Will Alves and Sammy Braybook. I mean,
Yeah.
I'm intrigued to see if Ben Nelson gets an opportunity next season, because Leicester obviously need a centre back. Because Charlo's gone. Vestergaard has got to go this summer.
Yes.
Ben Nelson's had a couple of loan spells. He's got a bit of experience now. Whether it's time for him to step up, because I know he's the one that a lot of them think he could become a good player. I know they love Will Alves.
Yes.
They think once he learns the game, he's got the natural ability. But he that was a horrendous injury that he had. So I mean, it didn't just like these ACL. There was all sorts of damage going on in his knee.
Wow.
So hopefully, he will come back not too far away. It won't be for the start of the season. It won't be for pre-season. But him and Sammy could be back in training around September time.
Hopefully, whoever we do get in won't have the same sort of Dr. Harold Shipman sort of effect on the players in training, because we do seem to get more injuries on there. But the next one coming up, Frank Hayes, is it? Hayes? I'm not sure, but he's actually in a job at the moment at Lens. But again, no English football experience.
So I don't actually necessarily think that's too much of a problem. But it's just that experience of being able to bring in players. What would he know about the market that Leicester are going to have to be in at the moment? He's not one that somebody's told me about, but he would be an interesting option.
There's some of these are, I must admit, at the far end of the scale of us actually getting somebody in. But look,
but this is where Leicester are at, because they've got so many options, and as I said at the start of the show, they will have numerous names thrown at them. The phone will be going all the time. How about this guy? How about this guy? Because it's a massive step, even though it's the Championship. I think it's the 5th or 6th richest league in Europe. So, it's 6th, I think it is. I mean, you've got France, Spain, Italy, Germany, Premier League. 6th richest league in Europe. So, it's an opportunity for any budding coach across Europe to come into the Championship. I mean, look at Vincent Kompany.
Yes.
He left Anderlecht, which was pretty much guaranteed Champions League football, to come and do Burnley in the Championship. So there will be numerous managers.
I'm sure he's looking at the fact that Pep's just said he's got 2 years left on his contract. He's thinking, I can stick at Burnley for 2 years.
Let's see what he does in 2 years at Burnley.
Yes, exactly.
Because every football club goes in a cycle. And it's how you manage the end of the cycle. Brendan can't manage the end of the cycle.
I know, it will be interesting. But then again, Burnley is only just down the road from Manchester, so But look, we mentioned this guy earlier, and I suppose if I had a spare 50 quid, this is the guy I would put him, not putting me money on to get it, but putting me money on of wanting him. And if Dan is in, who is a good friend of mine on here, but he is a Burnley fan, he's going to hate me for saying this, but I really do like this guy, John Thomason. He's obviously played in English football. He's managed at Blackburn Rovers, missed out on the playoffs, but he's got the experience, as you can see there. For Malmo, Denmark with the national team, Vitesse as assistant manager. I really, really wouldn't mind at all if we got John Dahl.
No, I don't think he would be a bad appointment. I think he's slowly built his reputation. He's done. I mean, as you go back to, his early experiences. I mean, back to 2013. He's done his apprenticeship. So, and as I said, when I saw his Blackburn team, and I've seen him a few times, not just when they played Leicester. Watched a bit of Championship myself, and quite like the style of play. I thought it suited Leicester, as I said earlier. It looked like a Leicester performance in the FA Cup. Previous Leicester performance. No, I don't think he would be a bad appointment at all. I certainly wouldn't be discouraged if they decided to go down that road. But he would be a good one. He would be a good one.
And like you say, he's done his apprenticeship. He's worked his way up. He's not like just gone in and then. I'm sorry to say this, but he's not done a Lampard, if you like, and gone straight in and struggled. He has worked his way up slowly. I mean, obviously he was at Newcastle when he was playing in England, but he only had 23 games there. But when you look at where he's played after Newcastle, it was Feyenoord, but he had 76 games at AC Milan, and I know that's playing and it's not managing, but it's knowing those divisions, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. It's knowing different types of footballer. No, it's knowing different environments, different tactics, different approaches, how to manage different characters. That's what you're after at the moment, because there's such a mix in that squad at Leicester at the moment. And as I said, a number are going to go, a number are going to come in. But they need to get the manager in pretty quickly. And if it's going to be John Dahl, they need to do some serious negotiating with Blackburn. Now, I know that he's one that maybe has been pushed towards Leicester because they see that as a step forwards. But whether John whether they want to go and pay compensation to get him out of his contract at Blackburn, whether Blackburn would entertain doing a deal with a potential promotion rival. Yeah, that's the complication in that one, I think.
No, there's always going to be a complication.
There normally is. Well, no, when there's managers out of work.
Well, yeah,
who are keen to get in. Yeah, they're all pushing for it. When there's a guy that's in contract, it's because obviously Blackburn are on the up. They weren't that far away considering their budget in the Championship. I mean, he worked on a really tight budget in the Blackburn last season. I think they were 17th or 16th in terms of the budget in the division. And for him to get that side where they finished that league shows to me that he could do a job on a budget, and Leicester will be on a budget. It'll probably be the biggest budget in the Championship, but it certainly will be a budget. So,
I suppose the thing is, it also depends on his relationship with the board at Blackburn. And I've actually worked at Blackburn Rovers for 6 months. Not the happiest 6 months of my time, but there we go. It seemed like a good idea at the time. And it was interesting because I was living in Burnley, so I was taking my life in my hands every day I went into work. The rivalry between them,
and the only other ex-Premier League champion that's got relegated, and look what they've struggled to come back.
Exactly. Yes, exactly. But this next one, I've got to say, what I was going to say was, it's whether John Dahl looks at it and thinks, what can I achieve with Blackburn, and how does that compare to what I could possibly achieve with Leicester? Leicester could bounce straight back up, where Blackburn, it could still be a while before they come up. But talking about coming up, if it's not John Dahl, this is somebody, again, probably my second choice, Kieran McKenna. But he's just brought Ipswich up. He's had the experience there, you can see at Spurs, if you call that experience, under 18s, then the same at Man United, assistant manager at Manchester United, and great success. And again, it's another top club, really. Probably don't deserve to be as low as they were, but then the tables don't lie. Kieran McKenna.
Yeah, it's another rising prospect, isn't he? He's somebody who's building his reputation rather than is coming with an established reputation. I just wonder whether it's too early for Kieran. Myself, in terms of the job that Leicester are taking on, it's a big leap. I know Ipswich are a big club, but they've been in the doldrums for such a long time, and he has done well there, extremely well. and he got the best out of George Hurst, who's
Yes.
just coming back to the club as well. I mean, he scored a few goals. I think he scored 6 or 7 for him on loan. It feels like for George, it's now or never, doesn't it? Really, now he's been at the club a few years now.
Yes.
Is he going to do it, or does he need another loan? And what's the point of another loan? He needs to stay. But yeah, Kieran McKenna be an interesting one. Another one out of left field. That one for me.
This one would reminds me a little bit of Martin O'Neill, not necessarily in style or anything like that, but again coming from a lower league club.
Yeah.
You know,
Who's to say it wouldn't work? We don't know. They've got to do their homework on him.
Yes. I
They've
mean,
really
whoever
got
we
to do
take on,
homework.
it's a gamble. I mean, had Martin, had it not been for Claridge's shin, who knows where we would have been or what might have happened. But those are my two. I've got to be honest with you in that order for the job, because I think they're young, hungry, and they know those divisions. The next one is somebody that Scott's just mentioned on the back of what you were saying about Vincent Company. I'm not convinced. Been sacked by Eindhoven. He's obviously got the playing credentials. He was assistant manager for Netherlands, Eindhoven under 19s. Went back as at the same time possibly, I think, Netherlands assistant, PSG. What am I saying? PSV, and he has just been let go. We're not going to get a Ruud van Nistelrooy, are we?
Again, that would be a huge gamble because he's not really. I mean, he's obviously done a bit of an apprenticeship back in Holland, but and he comes with great experience of the Premier League. He does know English football. Be interesting seeing him and Vardy, wouldn't it? And Vardy taking his goal scoring record in the Premier League. But he's not one again that's been mentioned to me, but I'm sure he would have been pushed. He's out of work. It would be a great opportunity for him to come and take over at Leicester. But no, it's not one that's high up on my radar at the moment.
I think if we had, I mean, yeah, we're talking about budgets and what have you, but we do know we've got to cut our cloth accordingly. But the names that he could attract, just because it's like with Vincent Company at Burnley, how many of those players would have gone to Burnley if it had been, Sean Dyche still, So, but
I don't think it's so much the manager. I mean, the manager does obviously play a part in enticing players over, but I think Leicester don't have that problem in the Championship because the players, the level that they'll be looking at now, the market that they will be in, and the money that they will be paying, they will be probably a lot higher than anybody else in the Championship, and they have got Seagrave as a backdrop to say, look, come on, work here every day.
Yeah.
This is pretty impressive. And I think it was a little bit of a factor. The move was a little bit of a factor in what happened this season, because that lovely little bubble there at Beaver Drive, where everybody sat with each other and had lunch together, the office staff and the players and the under-18s and the under-23s and even the chef, that sort of had naturally disappeared because it's a much more professional, sanitized environment at Seagrave. But in time, that will be an asset, and players will see that when they're walking, they'll be blown away by that. So I don't think that you need a figurehead manager like Ruud van Nistelrooy to entice signings.
I suppose the days have long gone from Martin O'Neill reversing players onto the pitch at
yes, long gone.
Yes,
gone. I mean, the club is still very attractive for managers and players.
Yeah. Terry's asked here, are clubs going to let their managers go? That puts them in the position Leicester are now, no manager. I suppose it's down to money, isn't it, though?
Yeah, it is, and down to the manager, the individual manager themselves, whether they would push for if Leicester came in, like John Dale Thomason, if Leicester came in for him now, whether his representatives would say, we want out. If you'd negotiate a compensation package, we would like to go. So it's not impossible by any stretch of the imagination to get a manager out of a contract if you wanted somebody that's already in employment. There's a lot of options out of employment as well, though.
We're going to look at some of those in a second, but I just want to go back to a point that you said earlier, because it's the transfer window opens tomorrow, doesn't it?
Yeah, but there's been deals being done for weeks up to
Oh,
now.
there has, yes.
It's just a strange thing. I mean, you just file the paperwork on the day that it opens, but you do deals.
They said not so long ago there wasn't that much of an urgency because we've got Martin Glover in place now, and we're in a better position than we were because we had no recruitment director this time last season, did we? Because he was on gardening leave.
Yeah.
But we've got him in now. But how soon do you think that decision needs to be made, or how far is it away from being made?
What about the manager or the players?
Yes, about the manager, sorry. Yeah.
I think imminently. I think we'll find out in the next few days.
Really?
Who the next manager of Leicester City will be. I think they've been going through the interview process. They will know who they want pretty much now. I think, and I'm just waiting to hear. If I can get wind of it, I will let everybody know. But
you've not got any holiday booked then for the next few days.
The summer is harder than the football season for us.
Yeah, you can't plan, can you?
No, you're constantly on the phone. It's all phone work. There's plenty to write about and talk about during the football season because you're watching the games. And you go from game to game and you go from press conference to press conference. But when it's the closed season and people on holiday, but the windows are open and there's deals to be done and you're expected to know everything and break everything, and the club doesn't want you to break everything, it can be very, very taxing. So this is like my, between now and the end of August, this is my busy season.
Yeah. Well, some names there that we've not mentioned, but these were the odds as per last night on Betfair on the Sun, and obviously as we have to say now, if you are thinking of putting a bet on it, don't do it just to try and get yourself out of any financial trouble, and when the fun stops, do stop. But most of them there we've talked about. The first one that we haven't, there's a couple there, Adi Huta and Daniel Farke.
Right, okay. Yeah. Adi Huta was one that Bild in Germany mentioned in April as somebody that Leicester were looking at. So he is somebody I would not discount. Really? Daniel Farke, probably... So I'm looking at this screen at the same time as you guys. Daniel Farke, I probably would discount at the moment. Martin O'Neill, they've tried so many times to get him back, and he's never been interested. Rafa Benitez, I think there was a feeling that that his style of play didn't suit the team. They tried for him when they brought in Dean. But I think the feeling was that he was there. He was available. They could have brought him in, but they felt that his style of play would have been too much of a jarring experience for the players. In hindsight, whether that's right, I don't know. Ralph Hasenhüttl, well, we beat his team 9-0. So,
but we also bought a couple of
and bought his two defenders and brought his head of recruitment in as well. So
yeah. And I mean, just to get, I actually, a couple of, maybe 12 months ago, I wouldn't have because I think he was treated badly and didn't really get the support that he probably deserved.
He is actually, his reputation within the game is a lot higher than people outside of the game perceive. You know, Ralph Hasenhüttl is seen as a really sort of innovative coach, somebody that can, get players, improve players. Because it's the thing about, Brendan's time about, he always used to say that he was a developer of players and that he can improve players. And I did see that with James Maddison, but I didn't see it in many others. But Ralph Hasenhüttl has got that reputation that he can improve players. So he would be. I don't think he'd be high up the list. Michael Carrick is really developing his reputation. Again, he's in a job. So
again, is it not too soon? Do you think
it might be? It might be for the job that faces at Leicester. Patrick Vieira again, like Van Nistelrooy, comes in with a big name, but that would probably be a big paycheck as well. Jesse Mars, I think we can discount. Marcelo Bielsa, no chance, unless he wants to take the under-23s for a season, because that tends to be his trend, isn't it, to get to know the club? Because is
that a bad thing though? Because
I loved watching Leeds under him. Because they were just they were like the Maverick team. I've never seen a team play five up in attack.
Well, do you remember Spurs under Ozzy Ardiles?
Yes, I
do.
They
were the same.
Well, in my neck of the woods, West Bromwich Albion under Ozzy Ardiles, it was like watching table football. You have two at the back, three in midfield, and five in attack. It was just like crazy.
Yeah.
So
they may score 4, but we're going to score 5.
And that's great. That's very entertaining, but I don't think it really will get you to success, as we saw last season, because Leicester couldn't keep a clean sheet.
And we're going to, I think, can we finally maybe put a nail in the lid and keep it shut on Martin O'Neill? I mean, I love him. He's a god. I'm reading his book at the moment, On Days Like These. A fascinating read.
I think so, yeah.
But I always say that it's like people saying, we want Nigel Pearson back. But it's Nigel Pearson without Craig Shakespeare. It would have been Martin O'Neill without John Robertson. And it's like, Brian Clough without, and I've forgotten the guy's name, and I feel really embarrassed. But I was Brian Clough's assistant manager for many years.
I can't remember either.
No. But you know what I'm saying? It would never be the same, because it's not the whole team coming back, is it?
Yeah, but I wonder if Nigel came back with a Shaky would come back with him.
You don't?
I'm surprised Nigel's name isn't on that list.
Yes.
Because if you're talking about somebody who knows the club, somebody who has rebuilt squads twice at Leicester, somebody who's had success at Leicester,
knows the division.
He's done it.
Yes,
twice before. I mean, they always say never return, but he returned and did very, very well.
In fact, we did a Leicester quiz the other day, and he's on his second stint as manager. He's got the highest win rate ever of any Leicester manager. So
yeah, I mean, Brendan had a higher win rate than him until this season, and then that obviously his win rate went down, his percentage.
Yeah. So, Terry, I'm going to put you on the naughty step, and you can go and sit on that naughty step for the next 6 months, and you're not coming off it.
Oh, Peter Taylor, yes, Peter Taylor, of course.
But Scott makes it, and I'm conscious of the time, so we'll make this the last one, because I had forgotten about this gentleman, but I actually, I'll take care, it's somebody that I'd actually would be quite interested in. That's Mark Robbins at Coventry.
Yeah, did very well at Coventry.
With all the things that have been going on there.
Yeah. Again, he's not one that I've heard is in the mix, but he certainly deserves to be in the conversation. He's in a job, you'd have to pay compensation for him. And, I mean, I'm sure he'd be interested in that job. But it was a fantastic job to get Coventry up. Whether and what he's probably got to weigh up is whether he can repeat that this season with the resources he's got at Coventry. Was that their chance? Was that their moment? And they couldn't get across the line. Will it come again this season? It becomes a challenge in the second season after a campaign like that. So He might be another one that you could certainly talk about, and And there's a lot you could talk about, and I'm sure there's a lot of people that have been talking about a lot of candidates
Yeah. Oh, yes.
for the job. I honestly got you. It is a different world on the inside of football than
Like a
than
game
on
of
the
chess,
outside.
isn't it? Moving, one moves
Well,
forward,
it's
the
just
other
a
moves
lot
back.
of.
Yeah.
It's like there's a lot of salesmanship going on, and
Yeah.
a lot of brinksmanship as well. And it's a very seeing it on the inside. Sometimes it's very, very interesting.
I am sure it is. Guys, look, subscribe to the Athletic. £1 a month. There's always offers on. I think it's £1 a month for the first however many months. Really good value, and you'll be able to see. Well, any day now, Rob announcing who the new Leicester manager is.
I hope so. Blimey, I hope so.
Fingers
They
crossed.
need to get cracking now, don't they? Really?
They do. Look, I mean, like I said earlier, we know that people have been to fault. People took their eyes off the ball. Maybe we we sleepwalked into the Championship. But these are still the guys that took us to a Premier League win.
Yes.
Would beat us in the FA Cup, and you can say, thanks to VAR or whatever, got us fifth twice. They've had more success than they've had failure.
Don't throw the baby out with the bathwater.
Exactly.
There's been mistakes made, and they recognise that. But in Kuntop, you've still got an owner that cares, and that's the most important thing. There's so many clubs that have got owners that just want to make money, or they don't care. There's other ulterior motives. You've got a genuine ownership. Susan Whelan is a good businesswoman. So that the business model will be sound. That's why they're not making a load of redundancies at the football club, because it still can run itself. I know John Rudkin's getting a lot of criticism, but he was the same director of football that was, that appointed Brendan Rodgers, and they won the FA Cup and got into Europe a couple of years. We nearly went close to Champions League qualification. So just give people chance just to learn from mistakes and develop and grow, because you never stop learning.
Yeah.
I certainly don't.
I've got to say thank you to Terry Payne. Yeah, Peter Taylor. That was the one that we couldn't think of.
Yeah, it was Peter Taylor. Yeah, how could we forget Peter Taylor?
How could we? I should know it reading, but about Martin O'Neill. I'm still at his Nottingham Forest part of his book at the moment, so I should have remembered that one. Look, Rob, thank you so very, very much, mate, for coming on and talking to us. There was a few to get through, and I'm sure after everything we've said, it will be somebody totally left field.
Yeah. I would be very interested to see who it is, because they've got a big, big job. I wish them all the luck in the world, because I just want to. I know a lot of fans are saying, "Oh, it's not going to be too bad a season in the Championship, going to different grounds and stuff like that." And I enjoyed my experience covering the Championship, but I've had a taste of the Premier League now, and I want to go back.
You have, and I think the thing for me is, in a way. And I'm sorry, I will let you go in a second. I do apologise, but
it's all right.
When we went down to League One, it's a bit like that, in as much as we've got to have this clear out, because financially there's players we've got to let go. We are going to lose a lot of players because other clubs are going to come in for them. But when we went down from the Championship to League One, it was almost like we needed that reset.
Yes, and this feels very good point, because this feels very similar. The club for a while before, and I wasn't covering the club then. I was covering over in the West Midlands. Yeah. But from what I know, the club, obviously, come down from the Premier League. There was a lot of high wages, and they slowly reduced that, and then they dropped through the trapdoor into League One for the first time in the club's history, and it just needed that reset. Yeah. That's why I mentioned about Nigel Pearson, because he was the one that come in and did that reset. Yeah. And then when Sven came in, and they spent a lot of money on players, and I was covering the club then, and they were spending a ridiculous amount of players. I remember going on a pre-season tour. We went to Austria, then we went to Sweden, and it felt like there was a new player coming every other day. It was just like ridiculous. And then it would have taken that team time to gel, and they weren't taking time. They were taking time, but it wasn't gelling. and then they brought Nigel back, and he just went systematically through that squad, got out the deadwood, got out the high earners. I remember him saying that to us as well, saying, you know, there's big reputations, but there's also big wages. So I just want big players, and he changed it. And then, you know, you saw the players that started to come in, you know, Rhea Myers, Vardy, Morgan, Drinkwater, you know, that was the team that won the title. So
I'll be crying in a minute. But
yeah, this is the thing. This is the thing, Chris. It's been. I know this is a sad moment in Leicester's history, but it's been an amazing period, you know, in the club's history. We will look back at it when they do the next Fossils and Foxes, which is on the bookcase behind me. And, you know, they will look back on they will look back on this period as being the greatest.
I did a show
in Leicester City's history.
I did a show after we got relegated on the Premier League years, and it's amazing. I mean, I joked about Spurs before, but, you know, there's some big clubs like, you know, Aston Villa. They would have loved to have had half the success we've had. You know, it's Newcastle, exactly. Yeah. I never thought I would see my club lift the Premier League, and I would have been happy if we'd have come third or fourth. Like I say, I never thought I would be crying in some stranger's arm at the end of you know, when we were presented with the trophy, or hugging my son when we won the FA Cup, or I mean, the chills that went down my spine. And again, I never thought I'd spend days like this with my son, listening to the Champions League music in a quarter final of a, you know, of the Champions League. Amazing years, and we have to hold on to those. And that's football. It comes and go, but hopefully it comes back again.
And cherish those moments. The FA Cup reaching us. I mean, one of my most spine-tingling moments was covering Leicester in the semi-final of the Conference League second leg in Rome, because the atmosphere was just astonishing. And to go to a city like that and work and cover Leicester City was just extraordinary. But all of the trips have been amazing. To go and see Leicester training pre-season in LA, and standing on the side of the pitch, watching Claudio Ranieri berate his players for not pressing hard enough in a training session, and then looking down the line and seeing Engelbert Humperdinck having a chat with Alan Birchnell, and then trying to drive across LA in heavy traffic to Will Ferrell, the movie star, taking penalty shootout against Christian Fuchs and Shinji Okazaki. Those are surreal moments.
Yes, yeah.
Watching Christian Fuchs decide he's going to do a Baywatch return on Santa Monica Beach, jumping in the ocean like an idiot. Yeah, they're all surreal moments.
I've heard Rotherham's very nice in late spring.
We'll have to forge some different memories this season.
And there'll be memories. Yeah. Rob, thank you so very, very much for sparing the time to come on.
Thank you.
And I will speak again soon, I'm sure. But I'm not going to sleep now for 48 hours. I'm going to keep one eye on the computer. I'll be refreshing the Athletic page every 2 seconds.
I'm hoping by the end of this week you'll have your new man in charge.
It would be great. Thanks very much, Rob. All the best to you and your family. Take care.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye now. Bye-bye. Thanks very much to Rob. Athletic, £1 a month subscription, and it is one of the best reads. I tell you, if you like your sports, honestly, football, not just Leicester, it is. I've been subscribed now for over a year. I absolutely love it. Do get over there and subscribe. And don't forget, coming up, we have got the big fat Leicester quiz. Brad is next up. He is the king, the quiz king. Not the Wayne version, I have to be honest with you. That's coming up next week. And tomorrow we have got the transfer show. I know it's not going to be transfer deadline day or anything like that, but it's just a bit of fun. And that's coming up. We'll be talking about possible signings, possible letting goes. And there's going to be a lot of those this summer as well, isn't there? But thanks very much for everybody, especially thanks to Rob. I've been Chris. This has been Leicester Till I Die TV. And this one is Arnie. Good night.
Thanks for watching. These videos are tremendous. You better like them too, or I'll be back.
This podcast is proud to be part of the TalkSport Fan Network.
TalkSport. Powered by fans.
That will conclude this evening's entertainment.